Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 21st chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
When they had come near Jerusalem and had reached Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately you'll find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says to you, 'Just say this, the Lord needs them,' and he will send them immediately." This took place to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophets, saying, "Tell the daughter of Zion, look, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put their cloaks on them, and he sat on them. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road and cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and that followed were shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest heaven!" When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was in turmoil, asking, "Who is this?" The crowds were saying, "This is the prophet Jesus of Nazareth in Galilee." The Gospel of the Lord. I need you guys, I need everybody to make a deal with me. No judgment, okay? We're in a church, I'm your pastor, all that good stuff. Because I know that my entry into this morning's sermon may not sit well with everyone. But I am specifically using it because of how it all played out and what I learned about myself and following Jesus. Because everything is a learning and growing experience, right? Well, many of my friends, if you know me well, you know that many of my friends come from the circle of the fire department. So stereotypically speaking, fire department people and pastors were a little bit different. And so they like to joke around with me and tell me about, what a strong pacifist I am. And it's true. I have only ever shot a gun once, and that's been in the last 4 years since I've known my husband. I'm not a hunter. I have never been in the military. And my own father likes to tease me that I am a bleeding heart, which is probably true. Anyway, when my boys were very, very little, I was solidly in the no guns camp. No judgment if this is not your own stance. I was so staunchly in the no guns camp that we didn't own Nerf guns. We didn't own little Lego people that came with guns. We didn't own water pistols. My son Jackson still remembers the first time that I let him get a toy sword. It was a big deal for him and for his pacifist mom. He was elated and I was conflicted. And my kids didn't even have the word gun in their vocabulary for a very long time. When they started making their own play guns out of Legos and running around the house calling them bangers, their dad said, "This is crazy. We cannot have children running around calling them bangers." So they learned the word gun, and I continued to impress upon them the dangers of guns, of how they aren't for playing, and how there is no reason for us to own guns. I was relentless. This was quite a few years ago, and it was around the time of the Million Mom March, to which I also took them. Remember, no judgment. Because for me, at that time, it was something that I felt strongly enough that I was willing to march. And so I did. And then one day, about 6 months after the tragic events of 9/11, my eldest son, who is now 19, came home from preschool and announced that his best friend's dad was a bad guy. Well, I was a little bit confused because I knew this family well, and I certainly wouldn't categorize him as a bad guy. So upon further questioning, Carter had deduced that his best friend's dad was a bad guy based on one piece of evidence. What do you think it was? He was a Marine, which meant he had guns. And I had been adamant that guns are bad. And therefore, in his little 5-year-old mind, Hunter's dad was a bad guy. Well, this wasn't what I had marched for. This wasn't what I meant, and this most certainly wasn't my intention. So I had some serious backtracking to do. Without getting into the whole long, drawn-out story following that tipping point, I will say that eventually we ended up with a whole arsenal of Nerf guns that would rival the toy aisle at Target. And once they became teenagers, I did let them play some of those shoot-'em-up video games, and they learned to shoot BB guns with their grandfather. And I just have to trust that they know and they are careful. You don't have to agree with me. No judgment, please. I know that I did some things right, and I know that I did some things wrong. I obviously made mistakes. But I don't regret what my motive was, which was always protecting the safety of children and leaving guns in the hands of those who are trained to use them. However, it's also true that I marched because I was scared, right? I was scared for my children, and I was overwhelmed by this possibility that danger could lurk behind any corner. Now, I don't know if my fear was realistic or if it was hyped up by the news media and my desire to be a perfect mom. But it was real for me. I felt desperate, and I wanted to protect that which I loved the most, my children. And I wanted to do something. So I marched. For anyone who has ever marched, there's an underlying motive. And for anyone who has ever marched, there's also an underlying emotion. So for me, it was gun safety and fear. It's unclear whether marches really influence those in power, or shift mentality, or engender real solutions. But it is clear that in times of confusion, people want to gather with like-minded people. And so on this Palm Sunday, I wonder what the motive and emotions made those people march. Now, obviously, I wasn't there, so some of this is guesstimation, but I'm basing my assumptions on Scripture and on predictive human behavior. The organizers of the March for Jesus, they knew why they were there. Jesus was going to save them. That's what they believed, that's what they expected, and that's what they chanted. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna. In today's day and age, that would have been plastered on poster board, along with cute catchphrases like, Jesus rocks my socks. I think it's also true that the organizers for the March for Jesus desperately wanted to believe that there was truth in their chants, because they were afraid and angry. They were oppressed people who were living under harsh political conditions and a brutal military. And they faced economic hardship with punishing taxes and religious subjugation. And they wanted change. And they believed that Jesus was their God. At least he was the guy for some of them. There were definitely people for whom he was not the guy, and they weren't at the March for Jesus. They weren't in the Jesus camp, but rather they were plotting how to stamp him out. They had their own rally going on across town. But there were others at the March for Jesus who didn't know why they were there. This is the great irony of marches, right? There are some people who just show up on the mall for the picnic or want to see what's going on. The Bible tells us that the whole city of Jerusalem was in confusion, asking, what's going on here? Who's this guy? Seriously, there are people at the march who don't know who Jesus is or what he's about. It sounds crazy to us because tradition makes a big deal out of this. But most of what we call Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem was just street theatrics and civil disobedience and a bunch of chaos. These are people who got swept up by the movement of the crowd and the emotion of the day. And they're probably thinking, well, if you're the guy, Jesus, then we're on board. Hosanna, 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 save us, anybody? Almost as if they were chanting their way to belief. These people, the would-be followers, they make the most sense to me. It's rare that I'll be on the forefront of religious, political, or social change. It's rare that I'm fully and completely educated on any subject. It's rare that I'm able to look much beyond my own opinions, my own needs, and my own hopes. I wouldn't have been the organizer for the March for Jesus. I may not have even gone. That may make me sound unprogressive, somewhat ignorant, and self-centered, and I probably am. But so were the organizers of the March for Jesus. They had their own motive. And the people that got swept up in the movement, and those who opposed the march. And I'm not really trying to be mean, but this is just human nature. Somehow it all boils down whether or not it fits my agenda. Jesus is going to save me. Jesus is going to overturn the empire. Jesus is going to hear my prayer. We typically support something because there's something in it for us. But the sad irony of the day is Jesus' purpose on that day and his followers' desires on that day didn't actually line up. I mean, let's face it, Jesus let them down. He disappointed them. The March for Jesus was a total flop. They got all riled up and hopeful, and he didn't save them. At least not in the ways they wanted. They heard what they wanted to hear, but they didn't see what he wanted them to see. Sort of like when my kids ended up thinking a brave, dedicated Marine was a bad guy. The medium doesn't always convey the motive. And in this case, they think the medium for change is the march, when the medium for change is Jesus himself. They believe that opposition, the right leader, overthrowing the power seat, and sheer resolve and might would secure their salvation. That and having God on their side. That's how they will be saved. But Jesus never said that. And Jesus didn't give them that. Jesus gave them and gives us someone who trudges to the cross for the sake of peace, for the sake of love, for the sake of the world, and for the sake of you. Honestly, Jesus didn't change anything that day, except hearts. Indeed, the way to salvation is not the way of marches, it's not the way of protests, and it's not the way of rallies. That's not to say there's not good and value and need for marches, but it is to say that what changes the ways of the world are the ways of Jesus. This week I had a sadly ironic realization of my own as I was writing. I felt it imperative to reiterate what the ways of Jesus are. Kindness, humility, love, gentleness, servanthood, and peace. As if we don't already know this. And I thought to myself, this is so cliche and tired, Christine. You guys come up with something better than just describing the things we know about Jesus. I needed something better to talk about who he is. As if I could illustrate Jesus better than Jesus himself does. Maybe I thought I needed a better catchphrase. But I couldn't come up with any. And it may be true that the church has overused this metaphor of humble Jesus riding in on a donkey, so it feels tired and expected. That just might be true. But it doesn't seem that the world has heard it, or been willing to see it. So I'm not going to give you something better than what Jesus gives us. I will not ask you to march for Jesus. I will not ask you to rally around the cross. I will not ask you to protest the execution of an innocent man. I will only remind you of his march, from life to death and back again. I will only ask you to look upon this man, this God, who gave himself for you, and ask you to do him honor by living your life with as much kindness and humility, love, gentleness, servanthood, as peace as you can muster.